Thank you, Karima, and also the faculty. You said yes, and of course the viewers and the listeners at all. And join you to wish everybody a happy Freedom Day, and the audience here. Let me put it this way. Firstly, that as a country, 25 years since 1994, we really have made enormous strides, historic, and judging ourselves even by where we come from, we've actually done very important things. But let me start by saying this, because that's going to be my anchor, that the most critical foundations laid by this, immediate foundations, after a long struggle against colonialism and apartheid, was firstly the battle we won, those of us who were fighting against apartheid, for the constitution to be drafted by an elected constituent assembly. Very important. Secondly, the actual elections in 1994 themselves, very significant foundation. And the constitution that we adopted in 1996. Now, also the nature of the constitution also reflects the role of the working class significantly, because we've got very progressive labor laws, the right to organize, to join a trade union, and improve basic conditions of employment, at least on paper. But also we have done things that have been very important. We have got now about 17 million people on social grants. Some people are cynical about that. Social grants, by the way, are not necessarily for the unemployed, are people who are not working, which is important in the context of the poverty that we have. We have electrified 7 million households. It's more now. It's 2014 figures. It's a very interesting comparison, for instance, Karima, because in 20 years, if we count 1994 to 2014, it's 7 million electrified households. Between 1894 and 1994, a century before that, we had electrified only 5 million households. So in 20 years, we did more than what this country did in a century in terms of electrification. By the way, I might as well quickly just make an example. I did my master's, I finished my master's thesis in a paraffin lamp in the 1980s, in the early 1980s. I did not know growing up in a mud house that you can actually connect electricity in a mud house. It was only the ANC which came with that. We thought that there can be no electricity. Education today, we're talking about 1.6 million students who have benefited from the National Student Financial Aid Scheme in higher education. Basic education, more than 80% of no-fee schools, with at least a meal per day in all the schools. Now, this is very important, these achievements, but also I don't want them to say, because of this, by the way, it's the achievements of the ANC government. I don't believe any other government would have done this. I want to put this up front. And you said, yes, I'm looking forward to debating you about
It's going to get hot in here.
But I want to say that this does not mean that we do not have huge challenges. Some of the challenges, for instance, we have is that we still have a long way to go. And there are certain errors also that I'm prepared to admit today that we did. From the standpoint of the SACP, I can tell you, we made a mistake by adopting neoliberal policies in the mid-1990s. Also, the other bigger mistakes that we've made is what now the SACP characterization as state capture, Now, that is why, therefore, we agree. The ANC says we now need a second, more radical phase, because the things I've outlined, we can say it was like the first phase of our democracy. Now, these things that we haven't addressed, unless we address them, they threaten to actually roll back the gains that we've actually made. And I'm saying this also against the background that, having said all this, one definition of freedom for us is that freedom is not delivered in a wheelbarrow to people. Freedom has to be fought for, and people have to participate. Just like under apartheid, yes, we were victims at one level of apartheid, but our people refused to be victims. That's why they struggled and fought and won this freedom. Now, it didn't end in 1994. We need now to make sure that our people continue to create and expand the boundaries of the freedom that we already have.
Thank you, Minister. You can see I'm a radio producer, I'm a time Nazi. I showed the Minister time, and luckily he's been interviewed so many times he knows when to rap. Let me introduce Eusebius Mkhize, author, public intellectual, broadcaster, and of course also my colleague at 702, the host of the Eusebius Mkhize Show.